'tis I, Madame Askew, and I'm here with my very special, wonderful guest, Weyodi OldBear. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's my absolute pleasure to have you. So everyone, I have to tell you, I mentioned it a bit, but Weyodi and I met at randomly at a gaming convention called Rincon Games here in Tucson in the Sonoran Desert, and a mutual friend called me over as I was leaving. It's like, you must meet this person. And Mary B, you were absolutely right. Thank you for facilitating the introduction. Weyodi, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful to get to sit down and chat with you.
Oh, I am so delighted to be here. So thank you. Thank you again.
You're so
I've been
welcome.
looking forward to this.
Yes. So when we met, you were at Rincon because you were helping to promote a new role playing game, Coyote and Crow, that you had been part of writing the world building and the book. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to be part of that project? Because it's a fun story.
It is a crazy story. It started the week I've been a writer for a long time, and I've played RPGs off and on, but I have to explain I'm a Comanche person. I'm a citizen of the Comanche Nation. I have Comanche cultural things. Part of that is my children, my adult children, and I all live in the same home, and my grandchildren, and they are avid RPG players. And I've been, okay, this is going to sound nuts, but I like to play. I love to read books. I
Yes.
love, we have many thousands of dollars in RPG books in the house, and I enjoy them immensely. Anyway, so it was the very week of the pandemic, and I had a little side job, like most writers. I had I've had my side jobs so that I can eat food and live indoors. And but my side job went away. And because I was one of the very first people exposed to COVID in the state of New Mexico, I had run into a child whose mother was like patient two, I think. Whose mother was the second person. And so they were like, you have to stay home for a month. And then everything wound up shutting down. And I had been released from work for 4 days, or told I had to stay home for at least 2 weeks. For four, I was 4 days in. On our lovely interwebs, there was an ad looking for Indigenous people with writing experience and RPG experience. And someone was trying to write an all Indigenous RPG. So I got in contact with him, an Indigenous futurist RPG.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say that I've been writing Indigenous futurism for quite a while. And
Right.
so that's sort of mostly my milieu is Indigenous futurism. And so I shoot the guy an email. An hour later, we're on the phone together. It's Connor Alexander. He's Tsalagi. We immediately hit it off. We're really on the same page. He's wanting to write about an uncolonized future. So I spent the first 2 years, after that, just writing on Coyote and Crow. I laid out the city, Cahokia, the business, down to the businesses and where the different districts are, like where the hospital is, like that really, like actually our only big conflict was about the sewer system, which is a bunch of shit. So and it wasn't that big a conflict. I was a my it was, but it was the worst one we had because Connor had this idea about using microbes, and to go. I wanted to go in the direction of the real people of the Amazon who created Pret a Terre, which is a highly enriched. They use human waste and crockery and animal products and all this stuff, and they burn it and make this highly enriched soil that is capable of supporting large numbers of people, you know, food wise.
Yes.
So Connor was like, no, no, I already have this bacteria thing worked out. And we had to go. And finally, he said, I started this. It's my game. Oh, we're going with the bacteria. You use the Predator some other time on your own project. I was like, all right, I guess, huffily. She said huffily. Anyway, so, and our goal was when we started and we set up the Kickstarter, um, to make $18,000 so we could get some of the books printed. We wound up, I don't know what the Kickstarter was, well over $1 million by the time the 30 days were up. It was it was amazing. We were all a little dumbstruck because it really had a, hey Spanky and Alfalfa, let's throw a show in the barn kind of you know
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
ethos behind it. But we all did our best. I feel like we all worked really hard. Um, like we had Will Thompson who worked out a trade language that is that is actually an amalgamation of different languages. Because me, I'm a Comanche chauvinist. I admit it. I put everything I wrote in Comanche originally. Everything had Comanche names. So I wrote the peoples of the freelands. So everything had a Comanche name. Everything was in Comanche. The people, the people's names, the place names, all of it. And Will Thompson came in and went, no, no, we've got to make this a little more democratic. We have to make this a little, a blending of different peoples.
Yeah.
But that is, that's how I did that. That's how that.
I love this story. This is such an amazing confluence of events to get to this point. And I do remember when that Kickstarter launched and the excitement around this game. And I think it's a wonderful reminder to game studios and people out there who insist that there's only one flavor of thing that people are interested in, that diversity does not have a place in these things, that's wrong. People want different things. People actively want diversity in our spaces, but also diverse people play role playing games. That's not even a question. I'm just like, yeah, that's right. Good job. I love this. But also, you all were nominated for a Nebula Award for your game.
Yes, and we lost to Thirsty Space Lesbians. But who could beat that? Who could beat Thirsty Space Lesbians? Who could? It's impossible. It's like, oh, we're up against Thirsty Space Lesbians. Who can top that? Not
No,
me.
it's very hard. It's very hard.
Well, you can top a Thirsty Space Lesbian, but that's a whole different matter. Anyway, maybe I could top a Thirsty Space Lesbian.
I mean, I trust you. I believe in your abilities. Also, happy Pride, everyone.
um,
So, no, but you've had this wild ride with this game, but you are certainly not new to art and writing or the way in which art is a series of serendipitous moments and connections with people. you've been writing for a long time and you have books out. You also write poetry. Can you talk a little bit about how you started your professional journey as an author?
Well, that's a little different than how I became a writer.
Mm. Well, all
So,
right. Let me say this. Which story would you like to share? The one where you became a writer, or how you got into being a professional author?
well, I've been trying. I have been selling poetry. I've been selling my writing in various forms, be it journalism or poetry or what have you, since I think I sold my first piece in 1988 because I'm old. And since then, I have written poems. I've written a lot of short stories. I've written novels, some novels that will never see the light of day, and I've also written some independent movies that were produced, some independent films,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
and done all this while raising children, baking, being a caregiver for elders with dementia. So I've had a full life,
Yes.
and but I became a writer because of an incident that happened in kindergarten, and I've written every day since the second grade. But the reason it happened was I was raised by my grandparents, and they were very traditional Comanches. My maternal grandparents. My paternal family is something completely different. But I was raised by my maternal grandparents, and my great grandmother lived in the home when I was very small. But so it was very, we had a lot of relatives and friends coming in and out, and we were powwow people. My grandmother was politically involved. We stumped for Shirley Chisholm. She and but so I went to kindergarten, and November came around, and the teacher put little headbands with a feather on the back on us, and we had a lesson about Miles Standish, and this whole story, and then and she kept talking about the Indians, and giving these lessons on the Indians. Well, I did not connect that to my family or anyone I knew. I just thought it was these fascinating people that my teacher was talking about. So I went home and I proceeded to give my family a lecture on the Indians as given to me by my kindergarten teacher. And my aunt, who also lived in the home because she was 15, I think at the time, she goes, "Weyodi, don't you know she was talking about us?" And I was like, "No, surely not. Surely not." She said, "That's supposed to be us." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." And she had to get my grandmother to come in and back her up and tell her that was supposed to be us. And I was like, "Well, that's completely wrong. That has nothing to do with us. She has a deep misunderstanding of us." And she said, she's just going by the book she's read. Don't take it personally. She's just, and I'm like, "Well, why are all their books wrong?" And she was like, "Well, they don't really listen to us." And this was when I was growing up, because I had elders in my home, and they spoke our language, and they knew a lot of history firsthand. My grandmother had seen the Oklahoma land run,
Oh my God.
watched it, and
Wow.
witnessed a lot of events in history.
Mm.
Historians came and interviewed them. And so I knew that this happened, that these guys came to talk to them. And she said, "Well, they don't really listen. And they listen, she had to explain how biases worked." And I said, "Well, when I grow up, I'm going to write our real stories." And she said, "They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to publish them." And I said, I'm going to make them listen to me. And she said, you do that. If anyone can do it, you will. Because I was a blabbermouth even then. And I was a little aggressive little girl who talked all the time. And she said, well, you do that then. Because if anyone can do it, you can do it. So you listen close and learn everything you can so you can tell them.
Yes.
So um, that's how I became a writer. And by second grade, I was writing every day. Um,
I'm not going to lie. This is one of my favorite This Is How I Became a Writer stories I've heard. It's full of some of my favorite energy, which is a little bit of like, oh, you're going to get it wrong. No problem. I will get it right. And also, I will make you listen to me. I love that energy. Also, especially from a 5-year-old, right, who has been blindsided by this kind of like, when you're 5, I don't think you know how deep the bigotry can run, right? And as your family members said, it's not necessarily that your teacher was intending to be hurtful or malicious. She didn't know what she didn't know. She thought she was doing the right thing. Um, we're a little bit different in age. I'm 49,000 years old. It means that I'm older than almost everybody. But as a time traveler, I went through education at different times just to try it out. And I remember that era of the 1980s and that penchant for reducing everything about Indigenous stories to the paper headband with a few paper feathers attached to it, as though that was representative of a massive number of cultural experiences and communities across the whole globe, but certainly across North America. There's such rich diversity. And I love, I mean, you know all of this. I'm certainly not telling you anything you don't know, but for those of us, those of you listening, this is sort of for you. Um, but one of the things I love about this story is the way it connects to Coyote and Crow. Because when you are creating this role playing book, this source book for something that people are going to be able to interface with, you're looking forwards to a fantastical, optimistic future point. And you're saying, along with your other creators, we're going to represent not a homogenous experience, but a diverse experience. I think that makes it even more beautiful for me, because it's easy for people outside to only see a homogenous experience. So when you are looking at this, when you are balancing the diverse experiences, I know you're coming from your Comanche background, but can you speak a little bit to other ways in which you were able to include that kind of diverse experience in the creation of this game system?
well, I will say this. One of the things, it was kind of interesting, especially from a Comanche point of view, because we did not exist. Because the idea is that there was a catastrophic event in the late 1300s that um, prevented what's one of the premises of the game, part of the premise of the game, that prevented colonization from happening. Well, in the late 1300s, many European nations that we have now did not exist in the form that they are. They were
Yes.
completely different.
Yes.
So with native nations, and I was thinking with this catastrophic ice age that hits the planet, that of course native nations would come together differently and break up differently, because the Comanche nation as such did not exist at this time. So I thought of we were actually a combination of Shoshone and Nawa people. So um, it's an interesting, what I wanted to do was kind of speculate in a speculative fiction way the different ways a climate catastrophe could affect geopolitical movement,
Yeah.
um, and developments, as well as technology and social development. So that was a big part of my imagining the different peoples when
Mm.
I wrote the different nations within the free people within the free lands. That really was about my speculative. It really was an exercise in speculative fiction and looking at history to project an alternate future.
Oh, all right. So look, this is catnip for me personally. I love this kind of following the thread of what if and seeing how it unfurls itself in storytelling, whether that is in, a movie, a book, an anime, or a role-playing game. They're all vehicles for this kind of storytelling, and I adore that kind of, you know it's emotionally driven, of course, because art always has an emotional thread to it, but there's a certain kind of anthropological logic to, like, well, we know if this happens then these sorts of ripple effects happen, so how would that look? I love that, and I adore that your looking forward also took you backwards to, well, this is the point, late 1300s, we know what actually was happening at that time, and how would this shift things. I just, so my favorite fiction takes that kind of approach, and it's remarkable, and you bring to it again this kind of nuance that gets lost so often because so many of our stories get told from a European perspective. And I do think it's very easy. Even I had a moment of going, of course, just like Europe, nations rose and fell and came together and formed in new ways. Of course they did. I just never thought about it until that very moment when you said that thing. And I love that there's still room for learning. At the same time, I'm chagrined at some of the need for learning, right? But you are a storyteller, and with storytelling comes a desire to communicate and teach, right? And you do both of those things in your work. You have a wonderful online presence. Everyone, you should follow Weyodi on Blue Sky. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. You post poetry regularly. You talk about the politics of the moment as well, and what's going on in Indigenous spaces. But and I'm here for all of that. But I just love your poems. So can you share a little bit about your poetry that you are posting online, this like little gift that you give to all of us on a regular?
Well, I've been a little ill, so I have not kept up. But normally I post a poem a day. I write a new poem every morning, and I normally been ill and I'm selling my house. I should get back in my swing, but that's how I warm up writing. People warm up
Yes,
singing,
yes.
warm up their, you know, you warm up before you dance or jog. But theoretically, I wouldn't know anything about that. But as my writing warm up every morning, I write a poem. So I think I've put out about 200 in the last year. Um, so it's about like that. And I sit down and write a poem. I have some longer ones that may have taken the whole day, like my fuck Jeff Bezos pie. Um, there was that one.
Oh no, your sound cut out. We were having this issue earlier
Oh
where
no!
we get
See what
excited
happened?
and then the microphone's like, oh no, you're too excited.
Yes, the that Thanksgiving, I had the "Fuck Jeff Bezos" pie was my poem, which is actually because my non-writing work has been mostly as a baker, a professional baker. I Jeff Bezos at Thanksgiving was selling a bespoke pie for an absurd amount of money, and I worked out the recipe. I I worked out the recipe, and it's a like a frangipan with a spiced apple on top, I believe, and a layer of plum. And so and a plum. I think it was a plum compote. It's on. It can be found on Blue Sky, but it was so it's in installments because it's longer than a single post can be, of course, but it's a detailed description on how to make this bespoke pie. But it's not bespoke. If it comes from a factory, it's not bespoke. If you make it yourself at home, that's a
Yes.
bespoke pie.
Yes.
Words have meaning. I know that's a political statement, but words have meaning. And a bespoke pie is one that someone makes specifically for someone else. It does not come from a Whole Foods factory. Thank you. Um,
I'm sorry. I am sorry. We didn't talk about this. My background is in linguistics before I got into time traveling. And
oh,
I so often want to just say essentially that words have meaning. The meaning can shift, but also words have meaning in a moment, and that there's a consensus around the meaning. Please accept that words have meaning.
please accept that words have meaning. Oh, by the way, it was 1975 was my um, was my kindergarten.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Yes, well, that was an era, wasn't it?
It
And
was an era. There was polyester in bell bottoms everywhere.
it's still
So
around, honestly.
no,
It hasn't.
no. So which goes on to my other project, my next project, sort of. Because before I started school, my grandmother was roughly the age I am now. So my heart goes out to her with that small, hyperactive, nonstop talking child. And she was, as a fluent speaker, she was one of the first people in our tribe not to be forced to go to residential school. So she never lost her language or her culture.
Oh my gosh.
So when she was in her 50s, she decided she would take this huge reel to reel, cart it around my hands. It's bigger than the span of the camera. This enormous reel to reel, lug it to the elderly center, which is a hangout spot for old people in the tribe where they serve a hot meal and have coffee running constantly. And there I learned storytelling, listening to old people, and I heard the best stories. And I also learned to drink black coffee. I was a 3-year-old who drank black coffee.
Oh my gosh.
I'm still very serious about my coffee, about my strong black coffee. And so that brought me to the book that I have that came out in October. But I have to explain the background first, how
Yes,
I
yes,
came to
yes.
write it. As Many Ships as Stars. Because before I wrote As Many Ships as Stars, I wrote the series that's coming out next week, um, which started out everything is a tangent with me. Everything, but this is not just me. This is a Comanche problem. Our language kind of works like this. And all my cousins, they always go, "Oh, my boss is like, could you get to the point?" But no, we talk around. We go the long way around. Anyway, so originally I wrote an apocalyptic series. Now I know lots of people write post-apocalyptic series or a post-apocalyptic novel. where this it's an ensemble piece really, but the central character is a native woman who is a plant geneticist. And the book is not post-apocalyptic, it actually follows the decline and the collapse. Um, and her name is Marjorie Morningstar, and which is my little joke to Herman Woke, and that well, she's a plant geneticist who, in exchange for paying for her college and her graduate and postgraduate work, she goes to work, agrees to go to work basically for the rest of her life, indentures herself to a large agribusiness corporation, a multinational agribusiness corporation. And then they get bought out by another agribusiness corporation who buy her contract. And they convince her that she should freeze embryos for the future so her career is not interrupted. But they harvest far more eggs than they say. And they use them for various experimental uses. One of which is to make super soldiers to form their security team. Now, in 2017, I wrote a short story about these security team, about a member of the security team. They are engineered to be deaf from and raised in tanks. And the story is called Red Lessons, about these children of hers. And this story won the Imagining Indigenous Futurisms Award. It's the National Indigenous Futurists Award. And I thought, I would like to expand on this and write about their mother and their father and about the employees at this, at this corporation, but also what happens to these people. I wound up writing a 3-novel series about, so it's not just Native people, it's not just Indigenous people, there's a runaway kid from a quiverful fundamentalist family there who is taken in by an old Jewish communist in Brooklyn. There's there's a there are some transgender people and gay people. There are Black people. There are Asian people. There are lots of Jewish people there, and so I wanted to really talk about all this stuff happening in the world and how things could develop. But also, I wanted to explain some things about Indigenous people, and specifically this character, Marjorie Morningstar, is a pretty disconnected Indigenous person. Her parents were both in the military. So while her parents tried to really did their best to give her an Indigenous upbringing, she is kind of straddling a fence in some ways. But also talk about these cultural things in the light of, not just her culture. We talk about the quiverful culture, this boy from Kansas who runs away. And, we have all these different people in light of each other. But I had to be very conscious about explaining things about Indigenous experience. And I was very conscious about it and tried really hard. And interestingly, I had some trouble selling the expanded story because people thought it was a little too cartoony on the part of my description of executives and corporations and their political, and then now not so much. But I had written this, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a cooling off. I'm just going to write something as indigenous can be and not explain anything, and I'm just going to let it all out. And people are going to use an indigenous, the characters are going to speak colloquially in a lot of, colloquial language. And I wrote As Many Ships as Stars, which is actually based on our oral history, our oral tradition of how we got horses. But I thought, what if we steal a Mars colonizing ship instead? And we set it in 5 minutes in the future, and we steal a ship bound to colonize Mars instead. So this is the irony of all this. These two stories. As Many Ships as Stars was picked up by a non-native publisher. The one where I just let it all out and didn't explain anything, and they're like a lot of little idiomatic phrases, like Oklahoma natives, we say, if you find someone attractive and appealing, we say you're liking it for them. You like it for them.
Yeah.
And that, like, little things like that. And they didn't ask me to explain. They just said, okay, go right ahead. And so that came out in October. It is available from fine booksellers everywhere and directly from the publisher, Android Press. And I got a review from Publishers Weekly.
It's a beautiful looking book. I've shared the link in the comments, everyone. So it's a direct link through bookshop.org, which is my favorite online seller. But as always, I recommend you go to your local indie shop and order it or request it from your library. It looks like a stunning book. I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, but it's like the cover's gorgeous. The blurb is exciting, and your build-up, your description of your story of getting there, but also your discussion of this incredible world you created of characters out of your own lived experience is very compelling. And also, we're laughing throughout your story because there's this moment, right, where people are like, oh, the CEOs, the corporate execs, that's too cartoonish, too ridiculous. And now we're here in this moment in time. And it just feels prescient, right? It's a problem I see called out sometimes when people talk about Octavia Butler and her like Parable of the Sower books and everything. They're like, oh, she's so prescient. She really, how amazing. She could imagine, how these magical powers. And the pushback, which I think is very justified and is also warranted in your case, it's not that you're seeing the future, it's that you're looking so clearly at the present and you're understanding the consequences of the present. And also, I think in your case that you really understand the past and where things come from and how they got there and extrapolating from there, because you grew up, you just shared with us your very particular story of growing up in Oklahoma with a multi-generational family in the home with your grandparents, getting to the opportunity to be surrounded by elders and to hear their stories. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but hearing that, I find it both so beautiful, poignant, and a little bittersweet, because I am aware that not every young person gets those opportunities. And so that makes it more powerful for me as a listener. But you've got an inquisitive, inquiring brain, and you are putting the points together, which I think is how poetry gets born too. But it's really compelling and it's part of your gifts as a storyteller, I feel like it's also part of your gift as a baker, because baking is sharing this food culture with people, and every mouthful is a little bit of a story, right? So I love that we came through Jeff Bezos's smoke pie to, and now we're here, we're in space, we've stolen the spaceship to Mars. Good.
And
So please
so, yeah.
continue.
Well, so that's one side. That's As Many Ships as Stars, which I'm really happy about, and I'm proud of. And I will see you, by the way, at WorldCon in
Oh my
Seattle.
gosh.
I'll be there. I have a booth. I will have both my art, because I'm also a painter, and my books. I'll be signing books, and I'll have As Many Ships as Stars, and I will have The Bees Made Honey in the Rich Man's Skull, which is, which is the title of the other. But that's had quite a transformation and a journey, because originally it was a 3-book series.
Mm.
But as we all know, nothing is unaffected by tariffs. And this 3-book series, originally a 3-book series, was picked up by a brand new indigenous publisher, Greasy Grass Press. Greasy Grass is the Lakota name for the Battle of Little Bighorn. So it's an all indigenous press, and they not only, unlike most small presses, don't own their own printing press, right?
Right.
Greasy Grass does. And they had ordered their own binding equipment from the Netherlands. And the company actually said, oh, in light of all this, we are no longer doing business with the US. Now, binding equipment is not made, bookbinding equipment is not made in the US. You cannot get US made binding, it just doesn't exist. And the capacity to make it doesn't even exist right now. So they were like, okay, well, I guess we're going to buy it from China. Well, the price just doubled. So, at the same time as the Netherlands, the company from the Netherlands was no longer willing to do business with the US, the Chinese binding equipment doubled in price. Also, thanks to the tariffs. So they said, well, we have the capacity to make comics, but this is not a comic. What we also have, they were like, we've been doing our research, and what we've discovered is a lot of people are incredibly stressed out right now. Who would imagine? Who would imagine? Who would imagine people are stressed out right now? And are reporting having a difficult time reading long stretches, feeling a little overwhelmed by an entire novel right now. Some people, because stress depends on our situation in our life and where things are. So Greasy Grass had a brilliant idea, which is to use their comic book binding equipment to produce the 3 books as one long serial. And they're going to be printing it as 30-page serials with illustrations.
Oh, and this is wonderful.
Starting next week, it should be available.
Fantastic.
From Greasy Grass Press. The Bees Made Honey in the Rich Man's Skull.
I love this title so much, I can't even pretend that I'm not like cackling about it.
And so we that the and it has some, it unlike As Many Ships as Stars, it does have some graphic erotica in it, just so that readers are either enticed or warned, depending on their how where they go with that.
But definitely prepared.
To be
Yeah.
prepared, gird your loins or whatever you need to gird, or get out your shiny pennies to purchase said book. And so I just wanted everyone to know, so they know. And that's that is coming next week, I believe. You can
Oh,
also buy them all as ebooks now. But if you like to have something in your hand, the serial, and I think I mean, to me, I'm delighted by the idea of reading as a serial. You know, something to
yes.
look forward to, pretty pictures. We have, and it's a lot happens. there's
This
there
is, I mean,
there are gun battles and tender romances and childbirth and daring rescues and terrible failures and murders and betrayals by your boss and terrible conversations with HR and sibling reunifications and arguments and treks the um, through land suffering from climate catastrophe and rebuilding a wonderful new world the way it should be. So we have everything. It's
I love that.
There you go.
Wow, and also the title. So,
And also the title.
it it this sounds incredible, and also I love this. If I may be a little twee, but the resilience of your publisher. They're like, all right, okay, well, I wish that the Netherlands understood that they were doing business not with the people who are a problem, but the people who are trying to correct the problem. But also, here we are. We're not going to give up. We're not going to stop. We're going to tell these stories and get them out there. It's tenacious, and I love that. And and also, I think maybe it's one of those circumstances where the adversity of the experience has given birth to a format that's going to be really fun. So having the serial, I think, is going to be really exciting.
They have some really great other work that they're doing that I really, they have some books on the intersex experience written by intersex Indigenous people.
Wow. Wow.
They have upcoming a serial of Indigenous stories, written by, he's an Inuk author, Dan Hansen, uh, called Idaho Jack, about a guy who is repatriating, an anthropologist who is repatriate. I believe he's a trained anthropologist who is, or maybe he's an archaeologist. Oh gosh, now I can't. I'm trying to remember because I've actually read them. I read the draft. Who is repatriating items and telling the story
Wow.
of the people and the items along with it. So it's got some hysterical, funny bits and some heartbreaking, just really dark places. They're
Yes.
great, but the Idaho Jack
Oh,
books are being turned into a serial. So they're doing great things, and I love Android too. They do also do Solar Punk magazine, and they have all these great books. For my birthday, they sent me a big box of all their different publications, and I've just been reveling in it. My birthday's next month, so
Well,
I
happy
pick early
early
presents.
birthday.
And so, um,
All right, we're going to wait a moment because it looks like our internet connection is being a little bit. Uh, there, you're back. I don't know if it was my end or your end, but we lost each other for a moment.
interesting
So,
for just a moment.
yeah,
So,
welcome back.
well, thank you. Thank you for having me back. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I love, but I was saying Android, it's almost my birthday, and I got a big box of books from them, and I've been reading my way through it. And they have an amazing, just an amazing catalog, and their Solar Punk magazine. Everyone should read it. Everyone should take it to heart. And so there are a lot of just I love my I know the day will come when I get angry with the publisher, but that has not happened to me yet. I'm also just finished the or not I didn't just finish. Oh my goodness, now they do yard work. So I had a comic come out from Green Archer Press
Oh, yes.
about an indigenous woman, a Comanche woman, who has an amazing superpower, which is the ability to travel along the NTP. The NTP, which is the program that syncs all our computers and all our devices. So your phone, your it can it can be a really snazzy, I think, overwrought oven, but I mean sometimes have the NTP in their, in their functioning. So if you're she could jump from your stove to someone else's phone to so she uses that power. Her name is Donnie Day. She uses that power to bust cyber criminals who are scamming people and stealing people's money. And she is, and she's normally a work drone at a cybersecurity company. But all the times you would normally hear, "I'm sorry, we can't do anything about that. These people can't be prosecuted. We have no way of reaching them in in whatever country they are." She actually uses her power to find them and squeeze your money back from them and gets them, you know, gives them any consequence she possibly, if she can get them consequences, she does. And her powers stem from the fact that her mother died giving birth to her in the basement of the Pentagon, where all the giant, horrible,
The big, big, big.
horrible computers were,
Yeah.
because she was born at the stroke of midnight in at night from between December 31st, 1999 and January 1st, 2000. Her
Oh,
mother was updating all the computers,
wow.
and she was born at that moment as her mother died, finishing updating all the computers in the Pentagon. She was born, and she therefore has the power to travel along the NTP.
Oh, this is an incredible, like, comics hero backstory. And for the young people, that was such a moment of anxiety for all of us who were there at the time. The Y2K moment, what would happen? Would the computing system still work on the first? And so many people were working in a Herculean way to keep us going forward. And it's I feel like it's a perfect time to have the birth of a hero for this modern age, because whomst amongst us has not longed for the opportunity to actually get redress and justice and equity out of these systems that are so organized to deny us all of those things, right? So,
Exactly.
oh
And
my
that
gosh,
hero is Dani Day,
Donny
Tani
Day.
Day. And her mother, we may not be quite as dead as everyone believes.
Dun
Um,
dun dun.
dun dun dun. So we'll, and perhaps at a future date, I will be talking to you about what really happened to her mother. But that's The Clock, issue one. I've written an entire arc. So they are busily drawing and lettering and coloring those future
All
issues in. But issue one came out, became available last week.
Oh, this is so exciting. I have shared the direct link to the press in the comments with the direct link to this
Thank
particular
you.
comic. So you can all check it out. Of course, my pleasure. I am so excited for all of your projects. And they all come with such incredible energy from you as a storyteller that you are seeing the world as it is, warts and all. And it can be a very uh, overwhelming time right now because it's not that things haven't been bad before, they certainly have. It's not like as though things have not been uh, truly deadly and horrific before. They certainly have. But it's a real confluence of a lot of things happening at once. And we're seeing it at a global scale, and we're all getting that information in a very intense fire hose fashion. I think it's very easy for people to look at that and either sort of be overwhelmed by dread and give up, or to write stories that are missing some of the optimism. And I love that there is this thread of optimism with your stories. Some people might be like, what are you talking about? There are bees and dead CEOs and skulls. Where's the optimism? Well, I mean, I could say the dead CEOs are optimistic, but what I am going to say really is that you're envisioning the what if it could be better portion. That it's hard, but what if someone could make it better? What if people together could make it better? I really appreciate that kind of what if because I think it's critical for all of us to imagine that we can have a better future. It's that like Star Trek philosophy to imagine we can have a better future. And you're doing that, but you're also very cognizant of the moment. And coming leading up to our conversation today, everyone, as Weyodi and I were getting settled and going over what was coming with the technology and all of the things that I normally do before we get started, we were talking about beige, the color beige and beige houses and the need for color and the need for critical analysis and looking inward but also enjoying the broader world around you. And you do that. You do not write beige stories. You are doing this work of reminding us to look inward and to embrace the colorful potentiality of the world around us. I think that that is so incredible. I encourage everyone to check out all of these wonderful pieces of fiction and the game playing system from Weyodi. I've shared a bunch of links in the comments. So you have the possibility to directly get to them. We're not really done with our interview today and our conversation, but also, look, if I don't take this moment to give you all a chance to ask questions, it won't happen. So I'm doing that. This is your moment, my darlings. If you have questions for Weyodi, this is your moment to ask them. So please do. Otherwise, I'll just keep being like, here, I'm going to open the door with a question and we're just going to enjoy your stories. So, my darlings, I'm I'm vamping, so you have an opportunity to ask questions in the comments. But as we're waiting for our friends to see if they have questions for you, uh, this has been such an incredible pleasure to just hear you talk about your process and what you have coming up, and to get to know a little bit more about you as an author, an artist. I'm so thrilled you're going to be at Worldcon, that I'm going to get to see you again, and to point people at your booth and tell them to go buy your books. That's the best. Are you doing programming as well at Worldcon?
Well, I think there was a mix up. I had offered, but it didn't wind up happening. Let's just
Oh,
say it's
yeah,
been, I offered, well, I do a lot of talk. So I
you
thought,
do.
yeah, I mean, you can catch me at Stanford usually once a year, and you can catch me at here. And I mean, I go all over the place. So,
Yeah,
um,
well, that's why we met. Is you were at Rincon
I was
Games.
at Rincon.
You do travel. You currently live in New Mexico, which is a gorgeous place as well, and has its own incredible history of indigenous culture, and also its own very difficult history of colonialism. Oklahoma is, another story, of course.
Well, it's interesting because my band, the Comanches range, whenever you see it on a map, is always wrong
Oh,
because we had many, many bands and they all had different bands. They had all had different ranges.
mm,
And I'm primarily Quahati, um, who used to be called, our original name was Hukiai, which is parasol people because we carried parasols. Um, we loved a nice parasol, and our range was Taos in the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in northern
yes.
New Mexico, so almost the Rockies, to a little bit south of Guadalajara and back again. We would go to Circle.
Yeah.
Um, so this is our traditional range. I don't say homeland because other peoples lived here all year round, and we were just their pain in the ass. So this we were there to bother them, make their lives a little spicier, and trade horses or steal horses, depending on how you think about it. So, well, we traded them after we stole them, but that's that's where I live in our traditional, in my people's traditional range, um, and so that's. And thank you for saying such nice things about me. You're such a
You're
good
so well.
one.
Yeah, it's I speak only the truth in this case. I'm not like the doors in the movie Labyrinth. There's not one of me that lies and one that speaks the truth. I speak the truth as I see it, and really, it's it's such a gift at any event to have a moment to just sit down and chat face to face and really go deep in the way that we were able to do at Rincon. I think we sat there for almost an hour
Oh
as
yeah.
I was like, oh, I have to go. And then I did that whole thing. But even though I'm technically supposed to leave, I'm going to stay here and get to know you. It's what happens between extroverts.
It was really great.
It was an amazing moment.
And I usually take one of my, and I say children, I mean 30-year-old children with
Yeah.
me, because my two oldest are game masters, are professional, they do professional they
Yeah.
run games
Yeah.
professionally.
Yeah.
So they can run, so I'll bring them with me because usually someone wants, someone to run a game, but I'm too scattered. I'm also, I get mad. I'm like, this is not the plot. This is not the plot I had written.
Back on the plot. Yeah, yeah. And games are very like collaborative storytelling
Yes,
adventure.
it's well. This
So
is the conversation. My youngest was like, I don't know how you could ever run games. It's too collaborative. I want to be the story fascist. The
I'd say story sovereign. That's much more accurate, I think. You're ruling with a very gentle touch.
with the gentle hand. I mean, death of author. People can often imagine plenty of things I didn't put in places. So that happens. But I have a link to the Bees Made Honey.
Oh, wonderful.
If you look
Thank
in the
you.
chat, I shared that so you can share it
Great.
in the
Hold on.
private.
Yes. Perfect. Oh my gosh. This is so helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm
of
just
course.
going to
Thank
drop this
you.
into our comments, everyone. Um, there we go. This is wonderful. And I love the premise. I love this notion of serializing the story. Part of me was definitely thinking, well, if Charles Dickens can do it,
Yeah,
like, right?
exactly.
So, and then I was like, well, you know what, actually, I mean, Dickens gets his due, of course, but the medium of graphic novels and comics and all of this is its own beautiful art form. And
Yeah.
I think it's a tremendous opportunity to sort of co-convene your serial in this format. Even though the circumstances are really unfortunate, like that, I underplay it. That's an understatement. I have very strong feelings about it, but also, again, I love that your publisher came up with a solution.
Well, I am choosing to look at it as kind of a Felix culpa, a fortunate downfall, that I think this might be. I mean, I feel like it's accessible.
Yes.
Financially, people can, you can spring for a comic. Everybody, we can pretty much all spring for a comic or something priced like a comic. And also, it's not, again, like I said, if you have a little time, you can read 30 pages of
Yes.
text with
Yes.
some
Yes.
illustrations here and there. You can, and it's not like approaching an entire novel.
Right.
Um,
And it's a treat you can kind of like spread out for yourself a bit then.
that's the problem
Uh,
that I have, where I get a book and I don't want to do anything else, and then I read it, and then I'm angry that I'm finished.
right, that book hangover experience at the end is so rough. Oh my gosh. Also, whilst I can sort of stretch out things like serialized streaming shows and that sort of thing, I don't personally have great restraint with books. So I think it's lovely to have this, like, you're going to get a little treat and then you have to wait for the next treat. It builds up a little bit of that tension, kind of like dating the book rather than you hauling the book right off the bat. So,
Yeah, we don't have to, we don't have to let the book move in. We can
yeah.
let the book, we can just meet the book for an hour in a hotel. So maybe
Absolutely.
30 minutes.
just a little afternoon diversion. It's fine.
um, we don't have to but then we don't have to do the book's laundry afterwards.
No.
Um,
Oh, that I love. That part I love. Uh,
um, so that's
oh, this is exciting. So you've got a lot of projects. You this moment of collaboration with Coyote and Crow has just ushered in a very fecund time in your career. Clearly, it's
Oh,
wonderful to see that happening.
absolutely. Absolutely. What's funny is I'm not writing any more than I ever was. People are just, or speaking any more than I ever was. It's just that it's, you know, not,
Mm.
my children aren't forced to sit down and listen to me give the same talk in the living room. And I'm not, writing just for myself and wondering when. Well, for a long time, I would get the same thing from publishers in writing indigenous futurism. Was, I'd get these lovely rejections
Mm.
that this is so well written and I really enjoyed it, but we have no idea how we would ever sell such a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I only get that from agents.
Ah, well, look, isn't that the way in the arts that you work for decades to be an overnight success?
Yes, that's, it's funny. Um,
So we've got a question from Bill. Thank you, Bill. And I'm going to tell you there is an answer for you. Uh, we talked about it a little bit before you joined us. You came in a little bit after, but there is a book. I've just linked it in the comments. Weyodi, can you give us just a little, like a little plug for As Many Ships
okay.
as Stars
As
again?
Many Ships of Stars, based on Comanche oral history, an indigenous futurist retelling of our oral tradition of how we got horses. Um, Leia Woodhopt is a Comanche aerospace engineer who is working on a joint public private Mars colonization project while living in a household with her extended family and watching life on Earth become steadily worse. And it follows her through this to her decision to take one of the ships, um, loaded with her family members, and how a society develops from that,
Yeah.
of spacefaring people. As
This is
in the
exciting.
past became a horse culture, Comanches in this future telling become spacefaring people, and in many ways become more and more traditional as time goes on.
Incredible. I love this whole premise. It makes me think about my very favorite of certain kinds of space opera, futurism. We talked a little bit about Star Trek and this idea of dreaming of better futures. But it even makes me think of games like Mass Effect and this like spreading of people and people developing a culture around being spacefaring peoples. It's such a beautiful premise born out of like the things we're seeing around us today.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of, for those who've not been familiar with the sort of terms that get bandied about in publishing circles, things like hope punk and solar punk, this kind of like futurism that says, all right, yes, things are in fact pretty dire, but what if we could imagine a better way out of this dire circumstance? So, congratulations on the release of this book, on your, serialized version of your 3-book saga. All of your work, your comic, the clock, all of this is like so beautiful. And joking aside, it can be so hard as an artist to work and really push yourself. Like the art demands the work, I think, and we rise to meet that demand. But there is a lot of working in solitude, which can be terrible as an extrovert, right? And hoping that you'll have an audience. And a lot of the publishing industry and other industries going, oh, yeah, no, this is really great. It's like amazing work. And also, no, we're not going to give you money for it because how would we sell it? We can't imagine how we would sell it. And then you have something like Coyote and Crow, and people are like, oh, maybe if we'd taken a chance on this, there's an audience. Um, and I know there's a piece in there that's so critical about community and connection and this sort of serendipity of you reaching out to the creator of Coyote and Crow and making those connections. But the connection wouldn't be there without your personal audacity. And certainly it wouldn't have been a fertile connection if you weren't already such a skillful storyteller and if you hadn't been doing the work all along. So it's like, it's grueling, but I'm so happy that after decades of the grueling work of honing your craft, you're getting your roses and having an opportunity to be in front of an audience. I encourage everyone to check out your work. And Weyodi, I just love that you made time for me and for us today. This is amazing.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's funny, I have these, the way life goes for me is that I have these periods where I'm hunkered down writing and it's almost like I'm underwater submerged in the story. And then I pop up for air and I'm in a completely different reality. And I talk to all these people about what I've been doing. So I appreciate the breath of fresh air of coming to visit you. I, the way I think about all this is I'm, I'm just, in many ways, I'm simply extrapolating on the world we're living in right now. But also, it sort of ties in with the idea of land back that a lot of non-natives really don't understand. And they go, oh no, does that mean we all have to go back to Europe? I'm like, no, no, no. What it means is addressing things in an indigenous way. It often means a change in how things are administered and administration, yeah. But it also is looking at things and doing things from an indigenous perspective, which can be different depending on the nation,
right,
or even the different parts of a nation, of the native nation, but is about indigenizing things because we've tried working at things from a Eurocentric perspective. And we see where that's gotten us. I mean, it has been a European take that has brought us to where we are. We were not working from an indigenous perspective. And the future is unwritten. We don't know what's going to happen. Jeff Strummer was right about that. The future is unwritten. But if we're thinking the same way we always thought and doing the same things we always did as a society, as a nation, we're going to get the same results. Yeah. So a fresh perspective, an indigenous way of tackling things, an indigenous worldview can offer solutions to a lot of these issues. One of the things that I write about in almost all my work, in most of my long form work, is gift economies, which are actually a great way to learn to understand gift economies. Is Coyote and Crow has a board game set in the RPG world, in the world of the RPG, but it's a board game that is all called Wolves. Um, and I don't know, most of us know that the whole Alpha Wolf thing,
Yes.
Alpha Omega Wolf, was very poor science and based on the behavior, the dysfunctional behavior of captive wolves, and that wolves in their natural environment have completely different social order. And it's basically a family and everyone taking care of each other. So the name of the game is Wolves, and people are trying to, what you are is you're the leader of a band trying to get elected as the overall leader of a group of bands by surviving, by making sure your band survives and you help as many other people as possible, because the more people you help, the more it adds to your social cachet. And the more, so because realistically, a billionaire cannot possibly spend $1 billion in their lifetime. What they're really buying and accruing is social cachet. But what if we gave social cachet, which is traditional in many, but not all, indigenous cultures, because there are 574 now. There are 570 separate. There were once many more, but one of the most common economic arrangements is the gift economy, where one gains social cachet, that is power, by giving things away. So the more one gives away and supplies to others, the more social power you have. And so you gain social power to become elected the leader of the entire tribe by making sure no one starves over the winter. But at the same time, we have a press your there's they wrote a press your I say we I was actually writing something else while they were doing this. I was actually writing as many ships as stars while they were doing this. But there's a press your luck element where you draw resources, but if you draw too many resources, you can make sure everyone loses and the game's over. So if you stress out the environment too much in your quest to feed everyone, you can kill everyone. So you have to, it's really about balance. I actually, at a climate conference, I taught a bunch of climate scientists to play this game. And it was funny because the first round, everyone tanked because they didn't understand the press your luck mechanism, which is ironic since their work was all about that very element. And once they realized it, they had it down. But that first round, they were so confused. You mean I can draw as many cards as I want? I'm like, theoretically, but you won't want to. And they're like, well, why not? Because then everyone will starve and we'll all lose. So it's a fascinating game. It really teaches a person about how gift economies function.
This is something I love about gaming and game spaces. For instance, I'm deeply obsessed with the game Wingspan and all of its iterations, and Cascadia, and they're both sort of environmentally centered games. But I learn a lot from these games, and I think for those who don't play board games, who this is not your particular passion or penchant, it's easy to assume that we've got, a Scrabble or worse, a Monopoly on our hands every time. And we could go into some discourse about those games and what you learn from them. But a lot of games can be vehicles for learning concepts in a fun way. And I think that's so fantastic with this game.
Well, my feeling about all games is this. I don't know if you've ever studied pedagogy, but when you're talking about pedagogy, the final phase of learning is synthesis. So when you play a game, you are synthesizing that information. And when there's new information about a culture or a system or whatever it is, gameplay is actually one of the best ways to learn anything and to learn how something works, because it's a way, short of the real world, to really synthesize that information into action and really understand how a thing works. So I think that gameplay, from RPGs to board games, are really, we're big game players. And I mean, my grandparents were huge game players. My great great grandmother actually, after she left, my great great grandfather was a very respected chief, and they had gone to war together. She actually was a woman warrior, and they fought side by side. But he had 8 wives, and she said, if you bring one more woman into this house, I'm leaving. As the administrative wife, I'm tired of their bickering, and I'm tired of the administrative work of this many wives. And he was like, yeah, right, whatever. And showed up with this beautiful Sack and Fox girl. And she was like, okay. And she was a middle-aged woman with I think a 6 and 7 year old is my guess. And her 2 grandmothers still living, both blind as bats. She just moved out and supported herself as a professional gambler. And so they taught us to play poker when we were 5. And then when you got to be 8, you learned to play canasta. And we had board game nights. So I really think that this is, it's good for your brain. It's good for learning math. It's good. I mean, that was why I originally got my kids involved in RPGs, was because I homeschooled for a while and I wanted to give them the best. It was a good way to work math into the curriculum. And so I really believe games can help develop a whole person. Um,
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Look, I don't know if people bring you out to talk about the power of games, but they should. That was a very rousing and excellent, appeal to why games are marvelous. Uh, as an aside, I haven't played it in years, but I love canasta. And that was something that I used to play with my grandparents, who I also grew up with my grandparents. And so I know that many people in our sort of who traveled through our particular time stream may not have played canasta. It's a little bit of an old-fashioned game, but it's wonderful and it can be wonderfully vicious. So,
yeah, and as an adult, I mean, the only person who could still beat me was my grandmother. And but my mother used to distract me by putting handsome men on my television. She would put, cheesecake and beefcake on the TV screen to
oh,
distract me,
oh, oh,
so she could win. That
amazing.
that's how canasta. I have not played in some time because I've been doing I've had a few other things on my plate.
You've
But
been so busy doing so many amazing things. But I
oh,
love that there's this thread through from childhood to this moment, and that is something you shared with your children. And also, again, I keep coming back to Coyote and Crow.
well,
It's not how we met, but it's sort of part of
it
the
is.
story, right?
It
And
is. I was there for Coyote and Crow. I was there at Rincon because of Coyote and Crow. So it is kind of how we met.
right, yeah. So it's just beautiful that we have this connection through games, that we both have this childhood experience with games, and that you got to share that you chose. I shouldn't say got to. You chose to share that with your children, and they are also now taking that on into their adult lives. But we are about to embark on another hour-long conversation, and we are almost at the end of our time. I will tell you, my darlings, as with so many of these Saturday morning conversations, that I have the privilege of sharing I'm just left wanting to do it again. So, Weyodi, I hope that I can have you back in the future, especially if you're releasing anything new. It would be wonderful to have you back.
I would love to. It would be my honor. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you
And
so much.
I have so many things.
Well, so much. So my big thing to all of you listening today, thank you again for being here. We're about to go into our closing segment. I'm very excited because I am a tremendously weird nerd sometimes. By sometimes I mean always. But I posted lots of links in the chat. Pick up some of Weyodi's work. If you are into role-playing games, definitely check out Coyote and Crow. Is such a gorgeous system, such a gorgeous game, and it is for everybody. So check out this game. It's for all of us. It's a wonderful way to learn about a different worldview, but also to imagine a better, different future. And I love that.
And if you're going to be at Worldcon, the artists from the book, the gorgeous book, most of them will be there. And the illustrator of the comic book, The Clock, Dale Ray DeForest, he also did the Hero Twins, he did the Reslow series. He's an amazing artist. Sada Coronas Esquivel, who did so much work on Code Crow, will also be there. It's just Derek Pounds, one of the other main writers, Connor Alexander, our fearless leader, and Alina Pete. So there are a lot of Indigenous futurists are making our way.
I love that. I love that. We're going to have a great time at Worldcon. I'm very excited. This is my first time going, and I just cannot wait to see you again in person. Be wonderful. But as we are closing out, my darlings, I love to finish up with my modified Proust questionnaire, and I just want to say that as I ask you these questions, inspired by a very intense and very internal weird Frenchman from the 19th century with whom I'm obsessed, the idea of the questions is just answer the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
And there are no right or wrong answers. It is merely a vehicle for learning even more about you through some weird questions. So, first off, what is your favorite quality in a human?
Intelligence.
Excellent. I love that too. What do you appreciate the most in your friends?
Forgiveness.
Ooh. What is the virtue you strive for the most?
Oh, that's hard. Temperance.
Ooh.
I mean, I achieve it.
That's a good one. What is your ideal way to pass an afternoon?
Oh, a book. Sit in a sunny window with a book.
Oh, beautiful. What is your idea of happiness?
Oh, to be with my love, eating cherries.
Oh, God. That's gorgeous. What is your idea of misery?
Oh, my idea of penniless with a broken car and no one to help me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is the lowest depths in that moment, isn't it? It's really hard.
Yeah.
If you had one, or if you have one, what is your motto?
Oh, what is um hope is a practice.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right. What what is your favorite swear? No holds barred. It's all welcome here.
Syphilitic, dog sucking asshole.
Oh my God, that's so good. Very vivid. Very vivid. I like the vivid ones. uh, and finally, this is inspired by all of the wonderful author guests I've had on the show. What is your favorite adjective?
My favorite adjective?
Yes.
I'm really more of a verb girl, but
I love that. You're an action person.
I am an active person. It's even our language, the Comanche. English is a noun-based language, and you learn nouns first, really.
Mm,
Comanche is a verb-based language,
okay.
and it tends to, even like our names or my name. Um, anyway, we a lot of names are verbs, and women's names particularly are verbs. But so I would say, all right, my favorite adjective, scary.
All right. I love this, but also I can't help but follow up. What's your favorite verb? Or
Oh,
a
fuck.
oh fuck. Oh yeah. Great
Yeah.
verb. Great verb.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of my favorite words in English, period, because it's so
It's
multifaceted.
it is. It's so versatile. It's practically silly putty.
Yeah, it's an amazing word. And also there's no attested etymology for that word, which I also love
Yeah.
dearly. Uh, Weyodi, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank
joining me
you.
today.
Thank you for
We
having me. I've really had a wonderful time. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Everyone, you can follow Weyodi on places like Blue Sky, but also check out her wonderful website. You can follow that for news and information. There are lots of links in the chat. Again, as with all of our guests, I encourage you to check out their work and take a piece home with you, or request it at your lending library. We love our libraries and we want to support them
Yes.
too. They're very important in any community space.
Yes.
So, and with that,
Please
especially,
go request it at the library. I'm speaking at the big ALA conference at the end of the month.
oh my
So
gosh,
yes, so please request as many ships as stars at your local library. On my website, I have a bunch of free poetry and a free short story about Bigfoot. And so, sort of.
I love that. Please go check it out. You've got the link to Weyodi's website right there in the comments. As we're going out into the world, I want to remind you all, oh my gosh, please treasure yourselves as I treasure you. As we treasure you, you are irreplaceable in the universe. You are the only you that could ever be. So it's very important to get your vaccines and boosters, wash your hands, eat your vitamins and minerals. We believe in science. Use it. Take care of yourselves. Put on the good frock, wear a tiara to go and buy your groceries. If we're going to have to pay like it's the 18th century and Marie Antoinette is in power, why not dress for it, my darlings? But no matter what you do, please know that I adore you. And none of this would be possible without your support and the support of our incredible Patreon community. So thank you all for staying here, for joining us, for being part of the magic. And I will see you on Tuesday to stitch and twitch and talk about sewing and all the things. And you can find Weyodi on Blue Sky, on her website, and at the upcoming ALA conference. That's so cool, Weyodi. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.